Recovery Sort Of is a podcast where we discuss recovery topics from the perspective of people living in long-term recovery. This podcast does not intend to represent the views of any particular group, organization, or fellowship. The attitudes expressed are solely the opinion of its contributors. Be advised, there may be strong language or topics of an adult nature.
Welcome back. It's Recovery Sort Of. I'm Jason, a guy who is in recovery.
And I'm Billy. I'm a person in long-term recovery.
And we're joined today by Alexis. Hi, Alexis.
Hi.
And Giuseppe from Talk Recovery Radio. Did I say that right?
A few hats, definitely. Talk Recovery Radio is one of them, for sure.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to make sure I got the title right. So we are going to explore all kinds of different things about recovery, and these two lovely folks are from Vancouver, which I think is like ground zero for open minds in recovery communities. And so we're going to talk, we're going to learn, we're going to explore, but I'm just going to let either Alexis or Giuseppe, whoever would like to start with a little version of your story and tell us about yourselves.
Yeah, for sure. Well, my name's Giuseppe, and super grateful to be here. Coming from a community called New West, which is nicknamed New West Recovery, which has become one of, I would say, not North America's, but definitely Canada's largest recovery community. I hear about Florida a lot. I still haven't been down there, but I think our recovery community is pretty happening. Some really large 12-step community meetings. I mean, you go to a meeting on a Thursday and it's just 250 people in there, and that's, your basic meeting. So and the other thing too that I'm really proud of our community is there's a lot of young people here. And we're living in a city that's very close to the epicenter of one of the worst drug ghettos, open drug markets in the world. The downtown east side, and it's really nice to see young people, because I remember when I was 20 or when I was 15, I'm talking young people as young as that, recovery was not on the radar. I was going to clubs when I was 15. I had long curly black hair and I looked pretty good. Going out to Detroit and just doing that whole scene. And if you would have told me what I was doing was wrong, I just, you disappeared from my life. And I went to the bars every night. Back then it was dollar drink night, and it was just so much fun. And I remember walking into a club called Backstreet. It was in a horrible neighborhood in Detroit, because I'm originally from Windsor. And I just remember it's a gay bar, and I just remember walking in, and it was an old supermarket, and it's like, most kids get excited to go to Disneyland. I was like, this is it. This is where I'm going to live for the rest of my life. And I did for like a decade. I just did that whole scene, and I worked in the scene. And by the age of 21, I had my first club, and I was in a bar, forever, and 7 days a week. And by the time I was 30, if I wasn't a drug addict, I probably would have been a pretty productive and rich hospitality business person. But unfortunately, I didn't pay my bills, and we just partied every night, and my friends were DJs, and it was the beginning of the after hours club scene, in the world of tech music, and ecstasy had come out, and I was just at the right place at the right time, and I'd like to say kind of dumb enough to like risk my life that much. Because I've done a set of steps, I've realized that. Back then, I thought I was the bomb, and one day it was like one day it just came all crashing down. I mean, it was probably a series of steps and consequences that happened, but I was just like, I got to get out of town, and I left town and I moved to Vancouver, and I thought, okay, I'll just start a new life. And I didn't know, I didn't go to counseling, I didn't go to therapy, I didn't ask people for help, I didn't have that, historical mental health conversation. I was just, high and drunk, and then I would pass out. And then I came to Vancouver with all those issues, but not knowing there were issues. Vancouver's drug scene was a bit different than the drug scene back in Windsor. and then I got into different substances that weren't really part of the club scene back then. And next thing you know, I was living on the streets, using in the downtown east side, and thankfully, I ended up uh, walking into somebody who was in a 12-step program who gave me some insight on what to do. And somehow, I listened, and long story short, it wasn't a very like, I've arrived, I'm powerless over my addiction, I'm gonna do all this work. It wasn't like that. It was kind of like, okay, how can I like do this so I can return to use and still keep using? So I struggled in the very beginning, had some relapses, had some disappointments. But now, I can say, I'm enjoying life, and I can see this as a way to live. So I'm pretty excited that I was able to get to that place. A lot of it has to do with the New West recovery community. It really inspired me. A lot of people joke around if they ask me for a topic for a 12-step meeting. Usually the go-to is fun and recovery. Because I really believe if you can't make this fun, and you can't laugh at your story, and you can't find some solution in your story, you're not going to stick around to do recovery. And that's what I bought into, and that's what I do. And somewhere down the road, I met this lovely lady, Alexis, and I was just like, I like her. And it was like 14 years ago, and I remember her at a meeting with her kid, at Saturday Night Live, and I was just like, yeah, she's like me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember that too. It's funny, like I grew up in recovery, really. I came to my first meeting when I was 17, and it was really to appease my parents. I started doing drugs at 13, and it was a way to escape. I had been expelled from like 4 schools, and this was kind of like the last. My parents were like, if you don't go to a meeting, you're getting kicked out, right? And I had already sort of gone back and forth, and so I started my recovery journey at 17. And like Giuseppe talked about, there were a lot of young people in the rooms that I was able to connect with. And even though I didn't get clean and stay clean at 17, when I was 19 and ready and had gone to a treatment center, when I got out of that treatment center and I came to New Westminster recovery community, who a friend of mine who I got to high school with, he had gone to the Last Doors youth program. So he said, hey, come out to New Westminster. The Last Doors a treatment center, and they had a youth boys program. He said, come out to New Westminster. There's tons of people our age getting clean. And so when I got out there, I didn't feel like I was in this stuffy room with all these people that were like 40, 50, 60, telling these like old school stories. Like, we were out having fun. Like, we were going to movies. We were doing crazy stuff on the street at like sober. Like, we'd go to 7-Eleven and like people watch at 1 a.m. and like, but we were all clean and doing it together. And we did some crazy stuff, but it was people that were together. We also did readings, and we would also go to meetings together, and then we would go all hang out together at the arcade after. It was like really fun. I had kids really young, like Giuseppe talked about. Like, my oldest daughter is 17. I'm 39. I had them really young, right? And so I would take these kids to meetings with me. When I got clean, I sort of looked at these other people. I still never really felt like a part of, or I always, even when I got clean when I was so young, I always sort of felt distant and different. And when I got married and had these kids, I felt like that was what I needed to do to be a part of, because I had seen these people that were, 35, getting clean, getting married, and having kids. But I was 20, like I wasn't 35. So I got married, and we had these 2 kids, and we moved out of the community. And when I moved out of the community, I sort of lost the connection of the community. I stopped going to meetings. It's that regular story that people talk about right before they pick up, right? Like I stopped going to meetings. I stopped doing all the things that they said that they would, that was keeping me clean for a long time. I stopped sponsoring people. I stopped talking to my sponsor. I stopped doing service. And I had these 2 little kids and this husband, and I'm living far away. And I had this huge ego, like, oh, now I have the house and the car and the kids and the guy and the everything. And I don't need that anymore. And then when that happened, I became really angry. And I remember saying to my husband at the time, ex-husband, like, hey, I don't think I'm an addict. I think that I could drink and I think that it'll be okay. And he was like, yeah, okay. And, I had this big thing of convincing him, like, you'll probably like me a lot better. And he's like, yeah, I probably will. And he didn't. He did not like me better. He did not like me better. And we got divorced. And I sort of set off on this. Like, for me, I never thought that alcohol was a problem, right? Because I'd always done drugs. I was doing crystal meth at 17, right? Like alcohol was never a thing for me. And so what I tell people now is that and maybe it's because I had more to lose because I had kids and a job and, a career and everything. But alcohol brought me down faster than any other drug ever did. And so it's important to give that messaging, right? That like, it doesn't matter what it was for me, that whatever I picked up, I used to this crazy thing. And so, yeah, I had this crazy like in and out, and I came back in 2012 and got married, had a couple more kids, got divorced again. And, and then I started doing the steps when I was in my 3rd year. And when I was in my 3rd year, that was like the thing. When I started doing the program as it's designed, my life changed. And I don't know, like Giuseppe talked about, like, it's a lifestyle now. People ask me all the time, why do you still go to meetings? Or why do you still do recovery? Or you're 10 years clean almost. Like, why are you still doing this? And it's really that I haven't repaid my debt to the people, the places, the meetings, the things that have given me the amazing life that I have today. Like, I've got 4 kids. I have a really great relationship with one of my ex-husbands. That's progress, right? At least one of them. And I've built businesses. Like, I'm really proud of the accomplishments that I've done and made. And if you would have told me when I got clean back in 2012 that my life would look the way that it does right now, I would have never believed you. So, yeah, I'm just really grateful for also having the New West recovery community because, yeah, I don't know, like, I guess I would have done it in somewhere else, but I'm grateful for the foundation that was set for me, because there are people there with like 35, 40 years clean, like a lot of people that still go to the meetings, that still do the recovery, that still help with the, destigmatization and the overdose and all the everything, that are just involved in the community, that are pillars that I can look up to and lean on still. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here. So that's my really long story. Giuseppe knows I like to talk.
Are you addicted to having kids? To being a mom?
I know. Well, I got remarried and he didn't have kids, right? And so I repeated the same mistake, right? Like I thought that when I got clean, that what's going to fix me is by getting married and having kids. Mm-hmm. Like it's this weird, and I think it stems from my childhood of like my mom getting married and having kids and being better and having my dad take care of her. And I thought that I needed a guy to take care of me. And what's interesting is, like, after repeating that same mistake, it's not a mistake. Like, my kids are amazing, right? But like, after repeating that same thing, like, what I realized after getting divorced for the second time, like, I've been really single since, and I've been self-supporting, and I make more than one of them. It's like, so it's like, it really, like, if I hadn't gone through that twice, um, like they say, like the universe gives us the same thing over and over until we learn it. And thank God I learned it after 4 kids and not 10, right? I feel like Beauty and the Beast, there's that one line where it's like the woman that's like singing, I need 6 eggs, that's too expensive. Like, I always wanted to be Belle, but I turned out to be that lady.
So he says that, but I have 4 kids and he has 5. So we have.
Well, I was just curious if she was addicted to being a mom, because I was addicted to sex.
Oh,
like,
okay.
That was my issue. I thought
That's why
maybe she
you
had
had kids.
different motivations.
Well, I'm just codependent. If someone asks me to do something, I'm like, okay.
So the New West recovery community, is that short for New Westminster?
Yeah, it's short for New West, and it's just a nickname that I got dubbed a while ago. One of the hats that I wear, I'm the Director of Community Development for a nonprofit charity called Last Door Recovery Society. And it's a treatment center that offers services to youth and adults. It's a pretty big program, and it's been around for almost 40 years. I've been there for probably 12 or 13 years as an employee. And one of the things, aside from the addiction treatment, it's an abstinence supported environment, no smoking program. It's got that nickname. If you want to get clean, you go to Last Door. If you kind of want to just put band-aids on your addiction, there's lots of other places to go to. Mind you, I'm friends with all the other places, so that's not a diss. It's just, people, that's what I heard in detox. You don't want to go there. That's where they make you get clean. So it's just like, okay, yeah, I'll go there. But yeah, so that's what it's called. But one of the things that Last Door's done is it's a strong voice for recovering out loud. And I work in the back office and we devote a lot of energy on recovery events. And they all started, I remember like one of my first events was a pancake breakfast for like the service committee of our 12-step fellowship. But with my background, I was in clubs for so long, I was just like, I can use some of that energy. And so me and a couple of other people started to put things together. And so the community engagement piece of Last Door kind of got bigger. And then it got really big, after a decade or so. And for example, at the back, this photo, that was Recovery Day pre-COVID, 2019. About 40,000 people showed up for Recovery Day. And it's a big deal because I was on the committee. It's the 10th anniversary this year. I remember 10 years ago, you couldn't even get 20 service providers to like set up an information booth. Like, there's a lot of them and us and you and me, and my evidence is bigger than your evidence, and my program is in. Like, we all spent so much energy in the addiction treatment industry, and I know this is in the States as well, where we just worried about our own business model in our own 4 walls. Like, we're going to figure out how to do our brick and mortar and just work on these islands, whether you're a private funded harm reduction, abstinence, religious program. And so when we did Recovery Day, we couldn't even get people to set up booths because they're all like, well, who else is going to be there? And it's just so weird. It's just like, is it an NA thing? I'm like, no, like, I'm calling you. I'm asking you to set up a tent. I'm not setting you up, so we throw potatoes at you. Like, I want you to be there. And probably one of the most proud moments was in 2019. We had 150 information booths. Like that's, and it's not just me. There's Susan, there's Lorinda, there's lots of people on our committee. But I was like, we hustled. Like, we hustled to get unity in the service providers. It was my dream. It was all the programs that we thought of. It's just like, be there together, because you know what, Last Door might work for you today. It might not work for you today. These people might work for you today. It doesn't mean we're better. It just means, or they're better. It just means that's where you're at in life. And that narrative is now pretty a common conversation. It's not the standard go-to. There's still, unfortunately, a lot of competition, especially in the States with private insurance. But it's the beginnings, and then COVID hit. The momentum's still there. We're looking at a big event again this year. It's on September 10th. We do that kind of stuff, and it's all because New West Recovery has kind of given us that opportunity to recover out loud and understand what the traditions really are. Anonymity doesn't mean be invisible. Anonymity doesn't mean keep quiet. Anonymity doesn't mean it's a secret. Anonymity means it's just you're not the reason why this is all happening, and that's a very simple way of looking at it. But we can get more into it if there, because we get the anonymity police calling us every once in a while. But the same thing with Pride. Me, Donnie P, Alex, a couple of my friends were like 6 months clean. They let us go to Pride because we're still living in a rehab center at the door because there was a client there, and we went to Pride, and the parade was done, and we're looking at each other, and we're like, we have to go home because everything was a beer garden at Vancouver Pride. And we couldn't really go to the parties. And I don't want to get into the conversation whether or not you can go to clubs if you're in recovery. I think everyone has their own path. But where we were at the time, we weren't allowed to go to clubs or to festivals that had beer gardens because we were still living in rehab. And so we went home, and this is a message out to everybody. You really need to make your recovery your recovery. And so we could have just gone home and been victims and been like, oh, my life sucks. Like I can't go to Pride anymore. And you're talking to a guy that went to Pride every year, all like did Pride, passed out at the end of it, but did Pride. And so here we are. We kind of like communicated with each other, and then with support of the organization the year after, we did a little fundraiser, and we put it together a Pride float for people in recovery. No one wanted to be in it. We had 9 people in it. Like everyone's just like, there was this idea like I don't want people to know I'm sober. I don't want people to know I'm in recovery. I don't want people to know that I was a drug addict. That whole thing. And and because I worked in the club business for a while, I was part of Prides before for a different reason. And I thought this is the same thing as the gay pride movement. Like I remember that conversation when I was talking to friends, hey, you going to Toronto Pride? That's here in Canada. And they're like, oh no, I might get seen on the news. I think about that now. I'm like, there's a million people there, like as if a camera's going to pick you up. But it's this subconscious thing in the background. Somebody might see me. And so fast forward another year, I'm like, you know what? We're going to make this a thing. And so we had a small dance on Pride, and we didn't want to make it a fellowship dance because then it's not inclusive. Because then you have to be in that fellowship to either hear about it or really feel part of it. So we organized a Pride sober dance. Not even Vancouver Pride was part of it. They actually said no, we don't like we're not really interested in being part of that. Like that's where we were at, 12, 13 years ago. And where the organization actually said no, we don't want anything to do with you guys. So we had this dance, and no one showed up. We couldn't even give free tickets away. But persistence and work, not being a victim and being like, no, this is right. Like I remember when I was 16 and I went to Toronto Pride, I didn't see the word sober anywhere. I saw Bud Light, I saw Molson Canadian, I saw weed, I saw drugs. And my dream was to have the words clean, sober, and proud in the middle of the village here in Vancouver. And, pre-COVID, obviously, in 2019, we did events every year, and we ended up closing down the main street of the village for a sober dance. And the words clean, sober, and proud were all across the stage. And yeah, it was a party and a drag show. Like over 1,000 people showed up just in the one area. Huge. But at the end of the day, we were so visible that hundreds of thousands of people saw those words. And so this is, coming from a group of guys that felt like, life's not theirs. They've lost their identity. But the reality is we just had to recreate it. And we had to do it through, positive thinking, positive aspirations, and work. People didn't do it for us. We had to do it ourselves. And so if you're out there listening to this show and you're like, oh, my identity, what am I going to do? And if you come at it from a victim perspective, yeah, you're going to have a shitty life. But if you come at it, it's like, how can I entertain myself, and how can I be part of the solution? Stuff like this happens. Like I'm telling you, we couldn't even get 20 service providers to show up. Now it's like there's a waiting list, and I'm really proud of that. So being part of the recovery community isn't taking what you can. Being part of a recovery community is what can you add to it. And me and an army of people, Alexis is part of those things. Alexis is part of our Pride events all the time, and people come to trust you. And still, you get those conversations like, I don't want people to know about me, but it's a lot less. Compared to when we all started this over a decade ago, it's more common people being okay to recover out loud. than it was, just even a decade ago. I remember we used to get in arguments on Facebook whether or not we could even talk about recovery on Facebook. Now, look at where we're at. And so that's what we do. So it's Pride, it's Recovery Day, it's Recovery Month. It's trying to. I'm not against harm reduction. I do believe you guys are going through what you're going through in the States right now with your harm reduction conversations. But I just believe that we need to make sure that we don't hide in anonymity while harm reduction takes over North America. Like recovery has always been a go-to response in Portugal, Switzerland, European harm reduction models. Recovery is always, the goal. It's never been sustained drug use, and North America, and including the States, is buying into the idea that harm reduction is not supposed to carry people to recovery. It's simply supposed to keep people alive. That's not the case in Europe, and they use the European model for the go-to for research, but they're not bringing the full story. For example, Portugal, you light a joint, you're getting a ticket. You smoke crack in Lisbon, you're getting arrested, and that's a country with decriminalization. And the only reason why I bring it up is one another project I work on is we're doing a documentary called Crisis. And I remember going to Portugal, and I'm from Vancouver, and I'm on stakeholder groups, and I'm involved. And I heard all this stuff about Portugal and Switzerland, and drugs are destigmatized because of decrim, and San Francisco and Portland and all your American cities are buying into that. It's not true. It's not true. I interviewed Dr. Galal, the founder of the Portuguese model. He's like, decriminalization has one of the least effects to reducing their overdose crisis. And if your son is addicted to drugs, you call the police. The police come to your house, they write your son a ticket, and he's got to go to a commission called the Commission of Drug Dissuasion. You don't go to jail, but if you continually use drugs and go on the streets in what they call social disorder, you will get mandated to treatment or go to jail or you get fined. Like it's just you never hear that when you have all these harm reduction advocates in these cities in America and Canada. You never hear that part of the story. You just hear the word decriminalization like it's a sexy hashtag. So, just warning you, if you have any other guests on your show and stuff like that, they start talking about Portuguese decriminalization, just stop and be like, yeah, no, this Giuseppe guy said you can't even smoke crack on the street. I went to a harm reduction clinic. I went to a harm reduction clinic in Portugal. I'll end it on here. It looked like a bakery. Like I was just like, this is the nicest harm reduction clinic I've ever seen. Like it looked like a bakery. No drug use outside. It was just completely in a cute neighborhood. It was in downtown Lisbon. And I interviewed the ED, and it was just there was no social disorder. Like it was like if you do drugs, here's your medical intervention, but we'll help you access the treatment right there. And so I asked her, I'm like, what would you do if somebody took this pipe and actually started smoking outside of the window here, like on the sidewalk? Because in Vancouver, it's everywhere, right? And she looked at me, and it's on camera. She's like, well, that would never happen. And you got to remember how she said that. That would never happen. And I was just like, well, what do you mean it would never happen? Well, we would just stop serving them, and we'd have to call the police. Like, you do that in Vancouver, you're getting fired. You know what I mean? And so you got to go back. Like, why did she say that would never happen? It's not like, oh, she can't do that. It's like it wouldn't happen because there's this understanding about community that we've lost here. It's like you have the right to smoke crack in front of my doorstep. I don't have a right for you not to do that. Portugal is the other way around. Dr. Golau said when we toured, we flew him to Vancouver because I needed to show him. And he said, I understand where you have gone wrong here in Canada. In Portugal, we left the responsibility of citizenship to the drug addict. It's very clear in Vancouver, the state has taken over responsibility of citizenship. And you can say that in California, you can say that in Portland, you can say that in every drug ghetto where it's become okay. And this is where we're at now. We're in a drug crisis. And Europe doesn't have that because from the day one, they said, hey, if you use drugs, you're not a bad person. But if you use drugs, it's not okay, and we'll help you stop. And I hope we get there. And part of the work I do is trying to get that message out there. And that's why I really wanted to bring it up in this interview, because we've lost touch. That's not like in Switzerland, they don't give out safe supply like M&M candies. It's a very high threshold treatment program. And here it's like I can get 30 dillies in the morning. So the drug diversion problem and people selling the drug, it's becoming a huge problem. The more opioids we have on the street, like in the OxyContin days, the worse it is for society. And now San Francisco is going to start doing safe supply because of the Vancouver model. It's just absolutely insane.
Whatever
So
you do, don't listen to the episode that comes out right before this one, because I argue that we should have free drugs for everyone.
okay, it's yeah, it's one of those things. No one's wrong, and the only thing that I think that we need to be careful of is we're trying to remove stigma of addiction. But when you say, hey, you're just a drug addict, once an addict, always an addict, here's your medications, here's your drugs, because you're not, that is that's stigma. That is what the stigma is out there. And we've already had safe supply. OxyContin was on the streets. That was pharmaceutical grade stuff. Like it was good. And look what happened. And so the research out there shows the more opioids you put on the streets, the more opioid addicts you'll have. And that's the research, and you don't have to believe me. Alberta, which is a province here in Canada, is actually doing hearings on safe supply where they gather, experts from around the world to actually look at the research on safe supply. It's not good. Like there actually is no research that safe supply actually saves lives. There's actually research that shows it causes more harm because of the drug diversion problem. But you go to Twitter, it's like, the holy grail of solutions. Twitter can't be science. Hashtags can't be science. And doesn't happen with other diseases, only addiction, and that's a problem. And at the end of the day, where we live, 6,007 people have died of overdoses since 2017, since the day they announced that this is a public health emergency. The response to that has been more and more harm reduction with a sprinkle of recovery oriented systems of care. So I don't even, I mean, Alexis can attest to it. I don't even know how many people have died. Like, I
Well,
mean, I don't even know anymore.
I remember back in maybe 2017, 2018, the mayor of Vancouver had a public sort of gathering of people.
Oh yeah, I was with you. Yeah.
And so they asked people to come and to speak on the overdose crisis. Okay. And then they opened it up to a table conversation for just general public to come in and talk about what they think. So anyone could show up, and a bunch of like recovering addicts showed up. And it was interesting. So they had like Mothers Against Drunk Driving. They had harm reduction. They had the safe injection sites. They had legalization or like decriminalization of they had everything. They had the health authority there. They had like the head of the health authority. Then they had the Vancouver police department chief that was there, and he went up there and he said, what's interesting, every speaker that's here today, there's not one abstinence-based speaker that was invited to speak there today, which is crazy. And it shows where the money's going. It's going into harm reduction. And so we had that conversation. Nothing really came about. I don't think anything.
Never does. Yeah.
It was just something to like appease the public, or say, yeah, we're talking about it.
Yeah.
But it was interesting to hear the Vancouver Police Department talk about abstinence as a viable option, and that was missing from that conversation. So, and I'm with Giuseppe. Listen, like I'm if there is, I have an aunt who's, oh my gosh, I don't even know how old she is now, maybe 68. She's been a heroin addict since she was 13. And she has been on a drug replacement therapy for the last 10 years. And she tried, in and out of jail, has never gotten off of heroin, right? So for her, the best option for her is to stay on a drug replacement therapy for the rest of her life, and that's what it's going to be. And it's not that she has a great quality of life on it, but she has a better quality of life than obviously than, you know, what she would have been. Harm reduction is there. It's an option. I'm not saying that it's not like, let's get rid of harm reduction. For her, it's important. It's there. And it's, you know, she's working and she has a little community of people, and you know, it's okay. It saved her life, but it's not the only option. And so that is
That's the whole piece with the recovery oriented harm reduction. So there's no guidelines, and almost every healthcare sector there's guidelines. And so, you know, when you talk about your grandmother, your aunt, and somebody who's older than you, I get it. But our focus is teens. Like when I started working at Last Door, you know, we have our programs for 14 and 18-year-olds. You really saw the change and the kids showing up and just how many meds they're on. Like I'm talking like huge meds. And here's the other problem. We're a private public partnership, so we have private beds and funded beds. You know, the private kids were showing up pretty quick because they had money. The funded kids weren't because they were going to the free clinics downtown. And I don't know how many times I heard the story, you know, where you know this if you had an uncle or an aunt in recovery, you seemed to show up to treatment faster. And then you talk to them, it's like, yeah, you know, my doctor told me, you know, we're talking about 17-year-olds. You know, I had to stay on, you know, methadone for the rest of my life. And every time I kind of had a feeling, he would up my dose. I mean, kids were showing up on so much methadone. And that doesn't happen in Portugal because Portugal is not privatized. And when it comes to methadone, you don't have any incentives for keeping people on methadone in Portugal. Here, and it's in the States too, you actually get paid to put people on methadone. So I'm not saying doctors are greasy, but I'm like, why are so many people getting put on Suboxone and methadone, and they're still dying? You know, the rates are still there, the overdoses are still there. So it was the thing of like, why isn't a clinic being regulated? How many people are actually being referred to recovery? Because if you don't have money and private insurance or private health care, you know, you're getting this type of treatment. But if you're rich and you can afford an intervention, you're getting sent to an abstinence program. It's the same disease, two different modalities of care. And everyone seems to be okay with that. And I scream that so loud when I go to stakeholder meetings. Like it's completely unfair that it depends on your financial capital to determine what kind of treatment model you're going to get. So I know tons of people that got horror stories from the methadone and Suboxone clinics, but they had money, so they survived it. How about the ones that don't? And how about those moms and those young mothers and young fathers that don't have an uncle or an aunt in recovery to guide them? Like there needs to be a national, so like the Commission of Drug Dissuasion in Portugal, we need that here. Whether you like the name or change it, you know, that's fine. But a national organization in Canada or the US that is recovery orientated, that gives you all the options of care despite how much money you have or don't have. And these are all, and we're completely okay with whatever you choose because we have no financial gain depending on what you choose. Like those psychiatrists and psychologists that sit on the commission in Portugal, they don't care where you go. They don't get anything out of it. They just want you to get well. But you have to pick something. And here it's just you go up to Google or you accidentally, like in my case, I accidentally walked into the right person. I shouldn't have to accidentally walk into the right person to get healthcare. It should have been offered to me.
This episode has been brought to you in part by Voices of Hope, Inc., a nonprofit recovery organization made up of people in recovery, family members, and allies. Together, members strive to protect the dignity of those that use drugs and those in recovery by advocating for treatment, harm reduction and support resources, and mentoring. Please visit us at www.voicesofhopemaryland.org and consider donating to our cause.
So one of the reasons, we do all this advocacy is because I'm a bit crazy. That's one. And number two is, I got a job that allows me to do it. But like I said, right, my friends are dying. And I'm finding, and I got myself involved where I could look and walk away and go do another job. But I decided to like actually, do something and try to break down this stigma. People in recovery are like, it's not like we get clean and we hate drug users, but people think that like there's the people in recovery and then there's people in harm reduction. And that's what's killing people because there's a lot of people in recovery that relapse. And then they don't really want to go to the downtown east side, or they have jobs that are safety sensitive. There's this gray area on what to do when you use drugs. And it's like these little neighborhoods that, foster, the ghettoization of drug users. Like the downtown east side, you can get everything there. Why would you leave, right? So, one of the projects that we worked on was creating an app. And the reason why I created a better app was because I have sponsees. Alexis has it's like when your sponsee relapses, do they just disappear? Do they just go? And so we wanted to keep connected with them. And there's an overdose prevention tool in there, which works globally. And if you're my friend, like I know tons of people that would be alive today if they would have used the safety net feature. It's like if you're going to use drugs and you're in an area that doesn't have some type of overdose response, and they don't go to consumption sites because they don't want to. Like everyone thinks it's stigma. Like I couldn't go to a smoke inhalation room, which they have here to do drugs, because when I smoke dope, I don't want to be around people. You know what I mean? Like I don't know why they don't get that. They're trying to make it an environment where it's like everyone goes to. It's like people like to do drugs by themselves for reasons, and that's never going to change. And so I thought, what a great idea to have an opportunity for, I'm not judging you, you can use drugs, but you're still connected to the recovery community. So if you ever want that moment of hope to be in front of you, it's still there. And so you can set me up as your safety net. If you're going to use drugs, you start the counter. If you don't respond to the alarm that shuts off, I'll get a notification that, hey, Charlie hasn't responded. He may have become unconscious. Would you like to call an ambulance? And then I know your address because you gave it to me. So I call an ambulance. So I didn't want to recreate Facebook for people in recovery. That's not the point. The point is, staying connected with people in recovery, staying connected when you travel. There's lots of features on there. But most importantly, it's like if you have a sponsee or like a family friend that's using in the basement, here, just use this clock, and if you don't, then I'm going to come downstairs and I'll naloxone you. I mean, there's so many dead people, and it's this, COVID was important, yeah, but like this is pretty important too, and I think the reason why we haven't been able to get to a place to really slow down overdose numbers is the disunity in all of the services and the setup of grants to really funnel into certain projects. And so we're all fighting for dollars. They think we're fighting for space. We're not. We're fighting for dollars. We're fighting for grants. And, if we do, like we have this thing in Canada called the SUAP grant. If we apply for a grant that has to do with anything that has to do with recovery, you're off the list. But if I want to open up a smoke inhalation room or a consumption site, it's like, check. So even people in recovery that are getting SUAP grants have translated their language. All right. And this is going to maybe go back to, your show that you guys did about pro safe supply. So there's, they've and they call it person centered. It's not, it's grant centered. Like, in Ottawa, they've taken the word recovery out of Recovery Day. It's called the Wellness Festival because it's people centered. I'm like, and I called them out on LinkedIn. USOB, like that's not why you changed the name. It's grant centered. It's because you want people who call themselves addicts and alcoholics and sober to show up at your recovery day, hide their identity because it causes stigma, and call it wellness. Well, you would never go to gay pride and tell people, hey, don't use the word gay, because 90% of the world thinks that, you're, yeah, you know what I mean? Like there'd be a revolt. It's gay pride. Everyone has a name for it, but here they've actually called it something else. And The same thing's happening in the States. It's grant centered. Never, whenever somebody says person centered, it's grant centered. It's like, how do I make this sound appeasing so I'll get my grant? And we don't get a lot of grants for what we do because we're like, you're an addict, call yourself an addict. You're an alcoholic, call yourself an alcoholic. And the more we say it, the less stigmatizing it is. It's just like I can't. We used to be part of this recovery organization. I'm not going to say their name, but it's American based. We left it because they gave us a how to organize recovery day and to not use stigma language. It's like, that's my name. I'm Giuseppe. I'm an addict. Like, I've been through enough. Don't tell me I can't use the word addict. It's like, that's the stigma. You telling me not to use it. I'm pretty proud of my label. And so Better App came out, and it's one of those opportunities for people to stay connected, save lives. You do step work on it, add sponsors. It's fairly new, a couple of glitches here and there, but we're working on it. We're just a nonprofit. I wish I was, had Facebook's money, but we don't. Hopefully one day we'll see what happens. But it's all about staying connected and building recovery capital in people. And I like recovery capital because it includes all pathways to recovery. And yeah, I got clean in a 12-step program. I got clean in NA. But that doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody. But when I say that, I don't want to say that it doesn't work. NA works, AA works, they all work. It just depends, so what you want to do with your life. And I think if we can continue to build unity and continue to believe that, once an addict, always an addict isn't true, anybody can get clean, we'll get out of this mess.
And that's the Better App. My version says Better App - My Recovery. It's by Last Door Recovery Society. And I say that because when I tried to search it up by myself, there was 18 billion apps named Better something or other. So it was just easier to find that way. And, one of the features you mentioned, this idea of like a way to safely monitor people who are going to be in active use. Alexis mentioned that to me when we were talking about it. And it seemed brilliant, right, at the moment she mentioned it, because I was like, I literally used to put 911 into my phone, and this was pre-smartphones, right? And I would have my finger over the call button as I did my shot, because I was like, well, maybe I can click it quick enough before I die, right? Like that crazy idea. And so to have this, that it was a good idea. I guess when you were talking about it here, the one thing that did come up for me, though, I was like, man, that is a lot of faith in like phone notifications and apps not breaking. Like that does scare me just a little bit. That's got to be a real monitored service, I guess. But the concept behind this, a place for people to, it's not so much. I feel like there's a kind of a recovery community website now, but it's not necessarily, it's more like 12-steppy focused, and that's fine, right? I don't hate the 12 steps, but this is more inclusive. I feel like it's got modes for everything. It's got places to hang out, step work, sponsorship, people to, ways to stay in touch with people who have gone back out, and that is a concept I don't think exists anywhere else right now. And so I would love to see, an Elon or a Zuckerberg like jump in here and start funding these kind of things. They need this kind of money. We need, like you said, we base things around grants, unfortunately, because that's the only way to get funding, right? And we need the money to do positive things for people. That's one of those things that's just necessary. And people don't want to put money into it.
We all have that story of relapse and then being like, am I still part of this recovery community? And that's a real situation. And then some of us, do the work to understand a lot of that had to do with psychosis. But there is some reality in there. Everyone's talking about me. And yeah, it's kind of true for 2 days, and then they stop because there's another person, right? But the reality is like, let's do our best at trying to remove that 24-hour period of making people feel, no, you're still part of, like, and I always think about Tristan, Alexis, like it just like he struggled and got lost in that conversation that he wasn't part of this anymore. And It's like, yeah, you are, but this was years ago, and I know the last time I had breakfast with him, like I could have told him, hey, if you're going to use tonight, like use this and tell me, and no judgment. Like I'll just, but we didn't, and that was one of the things that helped get Better App started. It was that drive. The next time I'm having breakfast with somebody like Tristan, I can be like, hey, if you're going to use tonight, like ping me, and that way you're not using alone. We're not going to stop people using alone. And this fight, I mean, it's good to spend money on the narrative, like don't use it alone. Like I believe we shouldn't stop spending that money. I think we also just need to start spending money on figuring out ways to support people that are using alone, because that will never go away. And it's my end at everything works. I remember listening to my boss, who's retired now. This was going back a long time ago, and this reporter came and did a story on the crystal meth ads that were across North America. It shows the person healthy, and then they go down and to like in jail, right? And there was this big advocacy group trying to get those ads to stop because they were stigmatizing people who use crystal meth. So I get it. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh, I smoke crystal meth. That's not me. Some people can smoke crystal meth and live a happy life. Some people can't. And so the story was about, and the advocacy was to stop these ads. And so they asked my boss, what do you think? And he said, well, everything works. It might not get you to stop smoking crystal meth, but it might get her to stop smoking meth. So let's do everything and hope everything sticks to at least somebody. And that's where we need to get to, where we're not like, this gets 80% of the funding and this gets 10% of the funding. It's like, let's just throw 100% of the funding at everything, because this idea that certain things work better. I know people on Suboxone whose lives, like they detox off Suboxone. It almost killed. I know one guy, it's like Suboxone almost killed me. But Suboxone has saved so many lives. So do we just forget about him, that it almost killed? Like it literally, like he just, his life was so suicidal while he was on Suboxone. Like it didn't work for him. And so it's one of those things where we get into this place where we're stigmatizing people with healthcare. It's like, well, this is evidence based. You need to fit in this box. You know what I mean? Like it's just it's not we can't treat addiction like we treat a broken arm, where it's like there's one intervention, this is how you fix it, and it's the best practice. You can't treat addiction and mental health like that. It actually causes harm when you try to treat addiction and mental health that way, because then you're like, oh, I'm not good enough. And I think even the 12-step community has realized that, because 12-step community is not the same from when I entered it. Like when I entered it, it's like do the steps or die. Now it's turned around where it's like do harm reduction or die. The pendulum's gone completely the other way. It's just like, what is happening here? And because I've paid attention, I've seen it happen. And so I think what we need to do is just try your best, and something will work. And I think that's a lot more freeing, and it's not forcing people. I don't think everybody in the world needs to come to Last Door Recovery Society to get clean. Like it's just, it ain't gonna happen, and we get that. But I think everybody should be given an opportunity to do that if they want to. And I don't believe that everything needs to, every service needs to be provided to everybody from the get-go, because it's not going to happen either. Who's going to pay for it? There's no money in it for now. I think we just need to give education to people and have, if anybody out there is a policymaker, have some type of organizational structure where the recovery coaching industry actually becomes legitimized. Like right now, it's in the private world. And it's like, who's got money gets recovery coaches. Recovery coaches can be the gateway to harm reduction and recovery oriented systems of care. But it's gotten lost in the private intervention world, and it should be done at the local level. Because any agency you walk into in Canada, I don't know about the States, but it's always tied to the services they offer. So of course they're going to promote their services. Why wouldn't they? They have a bottom line to meet, whether a nonprofit or not. It's just like, yeah, this is what we do, this is what you're going to do. And so to have somebody that is at arm's length from those services offering you suggestions on how to get well, that's a healthy, productive, recovery oriented system of care, because no one's making money where you go. Obviously, there'll be corruption and all of that someday, but you get regulations to fix that. Until we get there, I honestly believe from all the stakeholders I've sat in and all the work I've done, we're never going to get over this addiction crisis because that is the crisis. It's privatized and everything else is it. In Canada anyway.
So it's fascinating. I feel like we could spend, you and I just personally, like 6 hours, because I actually anticipated us being, and not that we're on like drastically different pages of all this, but we do have some slightly different takes on things. And I would want to pick your brain more because I do think you have a little more of the numbers and the scientific community research. And, I have, what I think are great ideas of mine. So I would love to have that discussion, but I am keeping an eye on time here. And I know one of the things that really attracted me to the idea of having Alexis on to begin with was this idea of the Recovery Kidz program that she has. And I don't want to miss out on hearing a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so Recovery Kidz is something that I started in 2013, and really it just was at Christmas time. My own family had given, because I have a million children and I repopulated the earth. I think the three of us have repopulated the earth together. So you're welcome, world. But my kids had like all this abundance of toys and stuff, and I was like, like I don't want to give them all of this stuff at Christmas. Like, my family like sent stuff and and it was just a lot of stuff. So I was like, okay, let's just drop it off to the recovery community. So I phoned a treatment center and I said, hey, I actually phoned Giuseppe and I said, hey, can I drop off some toys to the guys at the house? Like, could anyone use stuff to give to their kids? And he was like, yeah, bring it by. And then what I realized the next year when I did some research into it, with Christmas bureaus and people that are in recovery, is that kids that, like, parents that are in treatment at Christmas do not qualify for Christmas bureaus, at least here, because they need to be living with their kid. Mm-hmm. And then the people that are taking care of the kid often are not they're not getting child tax. They're not their actual guardian, right, on paper. So they don't qualify. So there's this gap in the system of these kids who are getting taken care of while their parents, plus their parents are in treatment, and it's weird, right? It's weird and traumatic and different, and all they want is like a good Christmas. And so I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go to Facebook, because Facebook was still a thing back then. It was really big. I mean, it's still a thing, but like Facebook was like, come on, it was like the moms groups. I like went to the moms groups. I was like, hey, like, let's figure this out. Like, let's get some kids some toys. And then I thought, well, my kids, like, I know how crazy different my own children are, right? Like, one likes one thing, another likes another thing. Like, I think of my niece who really likes hockey, and then my girls are like, I hate hockey, right? So I didn't want to get things for kids that they didn't want, right? So then we got wish lists of these kids, right, and what they wanted. And so we ended up filling like 2 treatment centers. And then the next year we did 3 treatment centers. And then this last year we helped 400 kids get toys and gifts at Christmas time. And we helped 8 treatment centers. And then we also sponsored people that were new in recovery that had just gotten out of treatment. So we helped like 5 of those people. And like one kid that I really, like, it touched my heart, wanted a scientific calculator. Like, you just think how basic that is, right? Like, you don't even have like, you're in grade 10 or 11. I think the kid was in grade 11 and wanted to take engineering at school and like wanted to like go off and do engineering. And they just didn't have a calculator to do that. And I thought, man, like, I'm going to get you that calculator. So I got the calculator, but then we phoned the family and we were like, do they have a laptop? And we found out that they didn't, and that the kid was like borrowing one from the school and like this back and forth thing. So we went and got a laptop, and then that kid had a sibling. So then we're like, well, we got to make this equal, right? So then we got the other kid AirPods, and like, just like, it just is crazy to watch these dads and moms. So we go in and we help them like wrap and everything. And like, what it's teaching is, it doesn't just teach that, like, first of all, it's teaching especially men. I find women are like, yeah, I'll take the free things. Sure. Right. And some men, but I find that most men are like, no, I want to provide. Like there's that instinctual, like, or like generational or societal, like pressure onto men to like, don't accept help, provide for your family. And if you don't, you're a piece of shit. Right. Like that's just kind of a thing that like men, a lot of men carry. And so that's why I chose a men's treatment center in the beginning. And that it teaches men that is, and women and people, that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to receive help. And so many people over the last decade that this has been happening have now come on board and helped others. Right. So now they have started a company or whoever they're with, or they'll donate like even like whatever, $10 or a Starbucks gift card or something. And so it creates this community of like, of giving. And then I find that for children, it allows it to just be a bit of a better Christmas, and to help relieve the trauma and help support kids is helping to break the cycle of addiction, right? And so now we're expanding it. So we're going to be offering back to school programs. We're going to be giving fees for kids at school to directly to the school, so that if parents can't pay the fees, or if they want to go to play sports at school or whatever, that they can do that. We're doing a sports music art fund, so that if kids, because here's the thing, creating community, we know that the antidote to addiction is unity and community, right? And connection. So if we're creating community and connection for kids, we're creating a distraction, which is okay for the kids while their parents are in treatment and getting better, that they don't have to leave treatment at Christmas to be with their kids. Like the gift is the treatment, right? And then it just softens the blow a little bit for them while they're in there. But then after, it's helping those kids to create community, create connections with other kids, connections with coaches and art teachers, and in order to help relieve the trauma of addiction, which happens, right? So I'm really excited about it. And I just know for my 4 kids that they really love helping. And was one thing that helped my kids while I was getting clean was like hockey and soccer and their coaches and things like that. So it's I watched it happen in my own kids' lives. And so I just want to help other kids too.
The other we do co-parenting group, and so those are the guys that participate in the gift receiving. And like Alexis said, at first they're all like, they're in treatment, and they're like, oh no, I got it covered. It's like, no, you don't. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have it covered. You're in treatment. Like, let us help you. And then they soften up. And then it's like, and Alexis does this great thing where they get to pick the gifts. They're kind of staged already, but there's some ability to pick, but you have to wrap them yourself, because that way it's not charity. It's like, it's coming from you. And that's a big piece of the whole, ownership of the gifts and all that kind of stuff. And another beauty part of this is people forget addictions they say, is a chronic relapsing disease. But we don't support people in early recovery like we do. Like the drug user gets all of this support. When you're on the streets and you're homeless, and there's all this crisis going on. Here's $1 billion a day. In Vancouver, it's in the millions a day. But the minute you go to rehab, and I've experienced this myself, you're kind of like, okay, but like I need help. Like even like if you're a drug user, you get a free cell phone in Vancouver. But if you're like on welfare and early recovery, you have to go get your own cell phone. And I remember raising that up at a stakeholder meeting. I'm like, why are you giving all the phones to the drug users? How about people in early recovery looking for jobs? There's still no program to give people in early recovery phones, but there's like hundreds of phones going out to the downtown east side every day. So it's this idea that Alexis created, the conversation that support people in recovery, because they need help too. They're getting their lives back on track. And so it's a wonderful thing to raise awareness, because a lot of people didn't realize, oh, I didn't think about that. Like I'm going to give a ton of items at Christmas for the homeless, But I didn't even think about people in early recovery who've got real challenges and don't have the drugs to cope with those challenges. So give her an applause for that because she's opened up this conversation of helping people in early recovery, and it's very important. So thanks, Alexis.
Yeah, I have my, look, there's issues with Christmas and consumerism and this, that, and the other. And I totally get that, providing one happy, joyous morning isn't fixing the year-long issues that are going on within the household and all that. But just as a guy who relishes the magic of the joy in my kids' eyes on that morning, and, my wife and I have always, for some reason, we've been drawn to helping families out that need it at Christmas, and we've done it in a variety of different ways. And I mean, I've cried with parents giving them the things that they're going to give to their kids because they feel better. They don't have to feel the guilt or the sadness, and just picturing what the kids are going to enjoy. So I'm all in. I'm drawn to it. I got a feeling I'm going to get off of here and probably make a donation to it, actually, if there's a way to donate. So actually, while we wrap up, Alexis, why don't you tell us how to be a part of that? And then Giuseppe, you can tell us how to, get into the Better app and get involved in any other ways that are important to you guys.
Yeah. So recoverykidz.com, it's with a Z. So recoverykids.com, or you can go to the Instagram, which is recoverykids. And you can get, I've got a little kid right here that's staring at me please. Yeah. So you can go there. And yeah, we really just, even if you just want to share a story or something of when you've been helped or somewhere that you've helped or whatever, we love just hearing and sharing stories, not just with Recovery Kids, but within the recovery communities. So if somebody just wants to come and connect, and there's lots of also ways to volunteer with us without donating money. Cause I know a lot of people are oh, I don't know how to donate. Yes, we will take your money, but, and we need your money. But we also have Amazon wish lists that we create at Christmas time. So you can go on at Christmas and pick the gifts that parents have actually picked out on Amazon, and they just get directly shipped to me. So that's a way to do it without actually giving money. And then there's just ways of sharing the message on social media and things like that, and volunteering. So yeah, Recovery Kids with a Z.
That's with a Z in America.
Yeah, we don't know what that is.
Sorry.
What's a Z?
But yeah, my friend Jennifer Wild, she has a podcast called Sober Exposure, and she is helping to. She's I want to start this in the States too. So if there's anyone that's in the States that wants to create that model that I've done, and wants some help in learning how to do it, and wants to give back to their community, even in a micro way, helping one place, you can reach out to me and I'll let you know everything that I've done. And I've learned a lot over the last decade, so that, I don't necessarily want to take it on, but if you want to take it on in your own community, it really is a great way to help out.
Awesome. And what do you got, Giuseppe? How do we find everything you're interested in?
So, if you want to support the projects that we work on, you can go to lastdoor.org and make a donation there. And in the notes, you can put, I want to support Recovery Day, Clean, Sober, Proud events, a Better app, or just treatment. So that's awesome. Thank you very much. If you want to download Better app, you can go to betterapp.ca, and there's links there. Or you can search in your app store Better My Recovery Plan, and it should come up. So Better My Recovery, Better My Recovery app. And that will help you find the apps to create your profile. And when you create a profile, you can create it as a person in recovery, a person who's using drugs, or a person that's a recovery ally. So we can all work together in those three realms. So yeah, that's Better app. And the radio show, Talk Recovery Radio, all that's on Last Door's website. You just go to links and you can find everything there. And we got lots of projects going on. And if you are interested in traveling to Canada, on April 12th and 13th, it's our 5th annual Recovery Capital Conference, and it brings together recovery-oriented leaders from around the world. to this year. It's in Calgary. It's a national summit. And I'm the co-chair of that conference committee. And we're at pretty much 80% sold, or 70% sold so far. So get your tickets. But we have some great speakers like Dr. John Kelly, Dr. David Bass. We've got the people behind the Iceland Model. You should get them on your show. That is a place that spent all their funding on prevention, and now they don't even have an addiction issue in Iceland. So it's called the Icelandic Model, and it's they did simple things like fund soccer for kids, for every kid in the entire country. And they waited it out, and 15, 20 years later, they from a country that had the worst alcohol consumption use on the planet, the worst. They had more people drinking there than anywhere else. They have the lowest alcohol consumption rate in the world. So prevention works. And that's what we try to do with Fun and Recovery. So if you like what you hear, go to lastword.org, make a donation, download the app. Let's save our friends' lives. If you have a sponsee using, you have a friend using, your kids using in the basement, tell them to use the app. It goes by text messaging. So what happens is you open up the app. The app sends a text message to your safety net. We call them digital spotters here, and you get a ping. Are you aware that someone's using? Do you want to be their digital spotter? You agree to yes. So there's that alertness, like I know someone's about to use. You get a text message saying Charlie's using, and give it 2 minutes. And if he shuts his alarm off, then he's okay. If he doesn't, then you have their address, and you can go spot them.
And can I just mention one other thing about the app that I really liked was that you have a section of speakers on there within all the different fellowships, which I found was really interesting because I don't tend to listen. Yeah, I don't tend to listen to speakers outside of my own fellowship, and to have them all listed there to be able to select different fellowships, just to get a more open mind about some of that sort of stuff, I thought was really neat.
Oh, and it's only missing recovery podcasts.
Yeah,
we need to.
You know what? We're going to be adding them. There's two things. One is if you hit higher power, it randomly selects any tape, so you never hear it twice. And I've done that a few times, and I never thought I'd say this, but I love the older wife in the Al-Anon meetings. I think they just, the things they say is it's like, oh, I love you. I want to have dinner with you. And the other thing too that we're really going to be kicking off, it's called Recovery Room, Live Rooms. And so you can podcast yourself live, and everybody in the app gets a notification. And so it's going to be like the Clubhouse and the Wisdom apps where you can pick a topic and do a live speaker meeting. And we're going to beef up that page a bit more too. But right now you can, they're going to be starting up. We have a series of people that are scheduled to do some. So we're excited about that. And, we'd love to bring on some more podcasts. So that's a project in the happening. So we'll be adding yours for sure, with permission.
Oh, sure. Thank you.
Absolutely.
The thing that I love about the Better app is that it isn't program specific. So there is smart recovery in there. It's a really easy way if you're traveling to find meetings. You can log into your own meeting. It's a connection app. And like Giuseppe said, like, when I relapsed, I had a lot of shame and I didn't want to come back to meetings right away, right? Like I didn't want to come back to meetings. People knew me, right? Like that, people are going to judge me, and like this hierarchy of clean time and whatever. And so if I had the app at that time, it's a way to create connections. I can log in and just feel like I'm connected to something without maybe having to actually step foot in there, right? So it's a bridge. And we talk about the wait times to get into treatment, right? Like how long it can take sometimes if you're not private care, where you're walking in that same day and you have to wait a month. This is a really great way to connect and get in and in touch and like talk to people in recovery and sort of listen to meetings and listen to speaker tapes and go into those podcast rooms and if I'm going to use in a way where, it's safe, right? And bridge the gap from that moment of, yes, I want to get clean, right? That moment of like, yes, I want to get clean. I'm ready to do it right now. And then actually getting into treatment. And so it's a really great way just to even have it on my phone and be like, you know what, even for me, even there's the Russell Brand steps in there, which is like, it's just like, are you fucked? right? Like there's no like program or anything. Like I told my mom, like my mom's like, I really like Lay's chips. That's how she relates to addiction. It's crazy. But she's like,
I love Lay's chips.
Lay's chips. And she's like, you know, and she, but yeah, like she could do the steps. Like anyone can do the steps. Anyone can do. It's just it's not just an app for people in recovery is my point. My point is that it's for anybody that's an ally of recovery, anybody that's been touched by recovery or by addiction. It's a really important app for people.
If I may, just two things I wanted to point out too. One is this came from where I work. We have this thing called the 12-step exercise. So if you have something in your life that's just really, you know, you're 2 years in recovery and like just you're breaking up with your girlfriend, you just lost your job, you did a little bit of gambling last night and lost a shitload of money, and now your wife's gonna find out, or your partner, you know, that kind of stuff. And you need to like find a solution. It's called the 12-step exercise. It's meant to be done in one day. It's just 12 questions. You answer them, and it's all digital and all that. And you can share it with your sponsor immediately when you answer the questions. And it's just an opportunity to like, and this exercise that our experience has helped so many people kind of get to a solution within a day without feeling all the pressure of the consequences. So that's something I really wanted to point out, like use that. It's going to help you. And then another thing is I don't hate Zoom meetings. I love Zoom meetings. I hate the pressure it's put on people in 12-step meetings, because they all of a sudden have become AV operators for mini conferences. It's like cameras and microphones and computers and laptops and projectors. It's like you got 10 minutes to set it up, and the pressure and I can feel the pressure it's created. Where, you know, and it's just this prolonged kind of acceptance of, you know, somebody's got to show up an hour early to set up this meeting. So you can stream your home group live. No more Zoom codes. You just find your meeting, you hit go live. Everybody in your home groups gets a notification. Anybody your mom wants to join in to listen to your case, she can log in. She doesn't need a code. She doesn't need a password. It's just, okay, it's live. I listened to it. And so we tried to simplify as we go into a less COVID world and meetings are in person. You know, for that odd small group of people that still want to stay digital, you don't have to have this audio visual company coming in, setting up your 12-step meeting for 20 people, you know, just go live. It's super easy. So I just want to point out those two more things I'm kind of proud of on this version. And hey, thanks for letting us rant and speak and talk. And, you know, I'd love to chat more, you know, on the side about some of our findings and what we're doing. And yeah, I'll send you some of the tapes.
Come on Talk Recovery.
Yeah, you come on Talk Recovery. We do our show every Thursday. It's a radio show that because of Zoom, now it's a hybrid between Zoom and radio, but it started off as a radio. We do the show. The studio is closed still, which should be opening up, but right in the heart of the downtown east side. So like we're climbing over people that are like passed out at the doorwell to go into the studio to do a show about recovery. And you know, it's our 8th year now, I think, and it's been quite the journey. And I got to tell you, for myself, when I started the show, I truly believed, you know, 12-step recovery is the only way. Like, I truly believe that. And now I've opened up the conversation. I mean, we've had people that run ayahuasca programs, meditation programs, you know, write books about this and that. And you know, one thing I've learned is everyone is trying their best. And the only problem is we're not being supported to all try our best together. And like when I did those ayahuasca program interviews, like he really was like, I want to help these people. And I'm like, okay. You know, the person on ayahuasca had to leave the studio. They couldn't stay in there for our safety and his. But you know what? Like, who am I to judge? Like, okay, if that's what you want to do. And but you know, for years we've all been fighting for space. So
yeah, that's beautiful. And yeah, we'd love to be on there. We'd love to have you guys back on here, because I know Billy's got a list. I can look at his list of questions over here, and I have quite a few myself that I wanted to ask that we just didn't have time for. But thank you so much. People out there, go check out these resources, the things that have named. There'll be the links in the show notes underneath of this episode. Check it out, be involved, be a part of, donate, set up one in your own community. Like, this is all about us reaching out to help the next one. Thank you guys so much for taking your time today.
Thank you. Bye,
All
Alexis.
right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Did you like this episode? Share it with people you think might get something out of it. Check out the rest of our episodes at recoverysortof.com. Also, while you're there, you can find ways to link up with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, YouTube, anything. We're always looking for new ideas. Got an idea you want us to look into? Reach out to us.